Good morning from a balmy minus 30 degrees at Lake Louise, Alberta. I live down the road here in Canada's first and oldest national park. I made a post the other day, it was a bit windy, but a post about the protests in Ottawa. As one of the overwhelming majority of Canadians who is vaccinated, who does believe in science, who understands that it's a complicated international situation, I just find myself feeling more and more frustrated because there's now, of course, a major blockade in the south of Alberta, which I just imagine if it weren't the sort of extreme, angry, generally right-wing fringe, it would have been cleared out already. And now I've heard that there's a move to do a blockade at the gates to our national park. Well, among everything else, my son goes to school in the other community, and on a minus 30 day, I would be extremely troubled by the thought of him having trouble getting home from school, and of course his friends and colleagues. So I do want to repeat, however, the point that I made the other day. I know it was very windy, but I do think, however one feels angry, and I do believe in the right to protest, and I have stood in my lifetime with placards before as well, and shared my democratic voice. However, just to repeat a basic point, if you find yourself in a protest for some point that you feel is genuinely legitimate and meaningful, and you're expressing your right to share your views, do take that step back and look to your left and look to your right. And if you have people nearby with racist flags, with angry materials, with calls for killing democratically elected leaders, then perhaps you're not hanging out with the right crowd. Perhaps you've not evaluated the information correctly as presented. There are rational debates. We live in a parliamentary democracy. Something like 86% of people in my province are vaccinated, at least to some level. That's an overwhelming majority. I mean, that's a much larger majority than voted for the current government. Even here in Alberta, and one of the things I'm struggling with in this province is there are members of the federal government and of the provincial legislative assembly that are siding with this sort of extremism. It's important to sometimes name, when it comes to democratic conversations, Miranda Rosen, who is the member of the legislative assembly for the constituency I live in, Banff Kananaskis, doesn't happen to live in our constituency, but has never come out in favor of vaccination and has been entirely silent on these sort of protests. Other members have gone to support the blockade in the south of the province, and the blockade, and let's just step back and be honest about this, is a tiny minority. Today, as I was driving out to Lake Louise here, I saw truck after truck after truck go by. It's hardworking, good people, I presume, doing their jobs, supporting the economy. We are living through a global pandemic. If one feels that they know better than all the research and all the science, still there is no vaccine mandate in this country, the way there is in Austria, for example. But all that aside, do people have questions in their minds about the vaccine? I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. It's a reasonable thing. However, we do know that COVID, just on its own, has killed, not figuratively, but literally thousands of Canadians. Looking down to the south, it has killed upwards, getting towards 1 million Americans. That is more people than died in every war in the 20th century. Millions of people around the world have died. And when I think of societies where perhaps reporting isn't as good, the number is indisputably higher. That's just science. So do I want to be a politician in the middle of all this? Of course I don't. But also, do I want to align myself with an angry fringe that is saddling or piggybacking on a conversation, and a difficult conversation on to when to loosen up restrictions, when to offer more or less control. But this idea of people saying that they are blocking up our roads, our borders in the name of freedom, I was always raised to believe that freedom comes with responsibility. And it strikes me that if one is considering a face covering to be somehow a massive erosion of their personal liberty, I think they really don't understand personal liberty. And we have a public healthcare system in this country. I believe in it. Once again, the overwhelming majority of Canadians believe in it. And our healthcare system allows us collectively to manage and decide, or to see, how many people are hospitalized and due to what. These are good, hard, solid statistics. So the Premier, Jason Kenney, here in the province of Alberta, once again gave a speech saying that we are going to lift restrictions as soon as we can. Yeah, of course, self-evident. There are more Albertans right now in hospital than at any other time during this pandemic. 13 more people died yesterday from COVID. And the whataboutism, well, where's the flu? Well, the flu isn't here because the flu is not as dangerous as COVID, and we've been taking precautions. Of course, we have to evaluate that as a society, and there are people doing that every day. And we have the right to hold the political leaders accountable through election. We in this riding, I think collectively, are going to make the move to ask Ms. Rosen to leave because it's a disaster and it's embarrassing. And it's embarrassing in a place that's economy is based on tourism. It's not lifting restrictions that will bring back our tourism. It is bringing an end to a pandemic through intelligent vaccinations, through public health, through good messaging, and not angry slogan chanting. And so when we step back and we say to ourselves, the same people, many of whom right now are blocking up our national capital, causing small businesses to be closed, honking their horns, disrupting everyone, and being funded by a really rather extreme right-wing fringe who are raising money, and a lot of dark money. So there's and even, of course, Mr. Trump down in the States saying that he supports the Canadian truckers. Well, keep in mind, the Canadian Trucking Association supports vaccinations. 90% of its members are vaccinated. So really, when this populist rhetoric is being shrieked out, it is intentionally divisive. And division is fine if it's proper political debate. But when it is just intentionally poking at a wound to make people angry, and also so painfully ill-informed. Lockdowns are a provincial matter. These rules vary from region to region of this country according to healthcare needs, according to scientific data. So the federal government can't close this down. The Canadian government could theoretically lift vaccine mandates for the borders, yet our closest neighbor and friend, the United States, has them as well. Internationally, they have them. And I expect, and I don't want to speak for all of them, but I expect many of these people that are protesting are the same ones who would stand there and protest for border security and anti a free movement of people when it comes to, say, refugee status, international needs and participation. But I will say that as a very moderate member of my community, if the road is physically blocked and on a minus 30 day my son can't come home, that will make us a whole lot more angry. And I do expect to hear something in support of our communities from our elected officials. So I'm going to go back in and warm up now because I don't have gloves on. But thank you for listening. Feel free, please, to share this around and let us moderate, normal, reasonably informed people unite around real science, real honesty, and real leadership. And let's push the extreme fringe to where they belong, way out of our political discourse. Thank you.